morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today we need to keep looking at new stuff, ladies and gentlemen. We need to have a look at Clayburst. Clayburst is the other half of the new set. I showed you Snow Hazard earlier. Today I'm showing you Clayburst. And there's some good stuff coming in Clayburst. We've again got a couple of new EXs to talk about, which is a pretty big deal. We've got a new Stage 2 to talk about, which could end up being a pretty big deal. And I, for one, am delighted. Once again, I did do these translations myself, but I did check with a lovely 2new1223 over on Discord, and I did have a check over at Cerebi.net with a lovely Joe, so I'm feeling pretty good about these translations. But let's start off with the big one, that big dude on the cover. We've got Ting-Lu EX, 240 HP. That's honestly big for a basic EX. A lot of basic EXs are coming in around about 210, 240 is big. We kind of expected it given the Pokemon, but still, this is pretty big. And it actually does have a weakness to grass here, which is a pretty big deal, because what grass Pokemon are good right now? Like, none. So I'm kind of loving this, ladies and gentlemen. I am kind of loving this, but HP alone is not going to make a card good and playable. So what else do we get here? We have the ability Earth's Curse. As long as this Pokemon is in the active spot, your opponent's Pokemon, other than Pokemon EX, that have any damage counters on them, have no abilities. Oh, this is good. This is really, really, really good. Now, you're not turning off EX abilities, but the wording here is very, very clear. It specifically says EXs, not rule box. It says except Pokemon EX. Which means if I go and put damage counters on something like a Lugia V-Star, for instance, well, it would be a Lugia V that would then turn into a V-Star. Then all of a sudden, that Lugia doesn't have any abilities. And when it evolves, I can put it on the V or wait till it evolves, doesn't really matter. But when that Lugia does become a V-Star, or if it's already a V-Star, if it hasn't used its V-Star power, it's not going to get to use its V-Star power. Not unless it gets this out of the active spot or removes the damage counters from it. And look, that's not exactly the most difficult thing in the world. Escape Rope is going to be your friend here. Because, it depends actually. To be fair, right, if your opponent has two Ting-Lu out, then Escape Rope isn't going to work. But as long as they've only got one, Escape Rope before something else active, and you're good. Or you can use something like a Boss's Orders to drag something from the bench into the active, and then once there's something else in the active spot, you're good to go. But if you're the Ting-Lu player here, you do legitimately have the opportunity to potentially shut down, like, your opponent's entire deck. And that's kind of hilarious. If they've got damage counters on, they can either heal, or they can get you out the active. Otherwise, they're losing their abilities. Archeops, that's a pretty big one right now. If you go and get damage counters on your opponent's Archeops, they lose their abilities. So even though Lugia's got the Archeops out, they're done. Go and drop damage counters on your opponent's Comfey, and now all of a sudden those Comfey can't be using flower selecting. You see where I'm going with this, ladies and gentlemen. And like I've said, EXs will survive here, so things like Gardevoir and Miraidon, that are of course very popular Pokemon right now, that are EXs, that do rely on abilities, will be able to keep those abilities, but still, it's going to get awkward very, very, very quickly. There are a lot of decks that this will shut down. And obviously, Hawlucha becomes like your best friend here. That is a new basic Pokemon that can drop one damage counter on each of two of your opponent's bench Pokemon. But if you've got Ting-Lu in the active, you go and drop yourself Hawlucha down, and it doesn't just drop two damage counters, though it does drop two damage counters, but it also turns off the abilities on two of your opponent's Pokemon. Against a Lugia deck, if I drop two damage counters, one onto each of their two Archeops, that turns off their entire engine for as long as Ting-Lu remains in the active spot. And these are just a few examples. This could be a very, very good Pokemon indeed. Oh, and there is a kind of broken combo here. It's with Gapejaw Bog. Gapejaw Bog, you know, the one what came out in Astral Radiance. Whenever either player puts a basic Pokemon from the hand onto their bench, put 2 damage counters on that Pokemon. Oh, well, they've now got damage counters on, which means that unless they're an EX, they don't have an ability. It won't work with things like Archeops, because Archeops gets played using Lugia from the deck. It's only Pokemon that actually get played from the hand, but still, most Pokemon get played from the hand. So with Gapejaw Bog and Ting-Lu as a little bit of a pair coming in here, that could get absolutely ridiculous, because your opponent benches a Pokemon, they take damage, they have no abilities, and then you kind of sit there laughing for quite a while because they have no abilities. This could get a little bit silly a little bit quickly. And the attack isn't amazing, but if the attack was amazing, this Pokemon would be too good. We got 3 fighting energy, 150 damage, put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. It's really important this is damage counters, not damage, i.e. it will not get stopped by Manaphy, which is a very, very big deal. And yeah, this is kind of amazing, because now you're putting damage counters onto your opponent's bench Pokemon, which is of course what you really want to do, because that's how you turn off their abilities. Yay! I will say, it's a bit too expensive. Honestly, 3 fighting energy is a little bit harsh, but the hope here is essentially that you turn off your opponent's abilities, so you buy yourself a bunch of time, so you can afford to sit there for a little while longer without doing huge attacks, because you're buying that time. But being able to drop damage counters and get around Manaphy, and obviously once you drop a damage counter on Manaphy, that would actually then turn off Manaphy, because it would be a non-EX Pokemon of your opponent to have damage counters on, and yeah, this can get silly quickly. In terms of energy acceleration, we're still in the situation where Gutsy Pickaxe is about the best we've got. Although do remember we do have Koraidon, so kind of turn 1, you can use Koraidon to get a couple of energy onto this. It ends your turn, remember, but this combos with Koraidon way better than most Pokemon, because the thing here is, until you're attacking, you're just going to end your turn with this in the active to stop your opponent, and hopefully one of these on the bench as well. So you don't really mind using Koraidon to accelerate energy to this, ending your turn, and then being able to get going a little bit faster in the future. And honestly, I like this with Koraidon. I love the ability. I'm giving this a tentative 5 Wassies. That might be a little bit too high, but this is an ability which can absolutely shut down a whole bunch of decks with a useful attack as well. This is pretty gosh darned good. Now, the other EX which was going to shut off from Clay Hazard was Chi-Yu, and at this stage, I do need to point out, they showed us 3 of the 4 Quartet of Legendaries, which is really, really weird. One of them's still missing, and I don't really get why. So, sorry about that. Wo-Chien is still not here. Now, presumably, it's going to be in Snow Hazard, because then there's 2 in each set. It's just really weird they showed off 3 this morning, but not the 4th. But yeah, we've got ourselves Chi-Yu EX, and Chi-Yu EX is alright. Now, we've got 190 HP, which is admittedly very, very, very low. But then we've got single fire energy, discard the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck. It's not stunning mill that's going to get you through the entire game, but as a nice emergency, or, you know, if your opponent's only got 2 cards left in their deck, play this, mill the last 2, they deck out on the start of their next turn, they have no cards to draw in their deck, and they go and lose. It's nice extra stuff. I don't think it's amazing, but I do think it's fine. I like it as an emergency or an extra. We've then got 2 fire energy, and it does 100 damage, which is fine for 2 fire energy. Do bear in mind we got Magma Basin here, so it will lower your already low HP a little bit further, which is a little bit sad, but it's also really good because it means you can play this down, attach an energy, use Magma Basin to get the other energy, and then all of a sudden you are actually rolling in 1 turn, which is really cool. And you deal 100 damage, which is fine, much better if you are hitting for weakness. and you get to choose 3 of your bench Pokemon, and to each of them, you can attach a basic fire energy from the deck. And this is a big deal. No having to have the energy in hand, no having to get the energy in your discard or any of that rubbish. As long as you've got energy in your deck, and you should most of the time, you are going to be able to just accelerate that energy, and job is going to be a good one. I'm not in love with this like I am with Ting-Lu. I think Ting-Lu's great. I think this is pretty good. I like the first attack for a little bit of cheeky milling, emergency milling, call it what you will. I like the second attack for the energy acceleration, and if I can get a KO with Chi-Yu while accelerating free energy, that is huge. And that's why I really like Chi-Yu as like a one-off in a whole bunch of decks. Because if I'm in a situation where my opponent's got an EX, for instance, with 100 HP remaining, I take a KO on that EX with Chi-Yu, I accelerate my free energy, and even if I get KO'd in return, the worst case scenario is I've traded 2 prizes for 2 prizes, but I've also then got a bunch of energy on the field, which I feel pretty gosh darn good about. So yeah, I'm giving this one 4 Wassies as a good one-off, and again, it might be a little bit overly enthusiastic, but I'm okay with that. And then there's one more we need to talk about just quickly here. It is Garganacl. We kind of like Garganacl. It's one of those Pokemon that I ignored largely in my first run through when I played through Violet, and then I played through Scarlet, and I put it on my team, and it was the best part of my team. This thing is a beast, at least playing through the game normally. And here it has a really interesting ability. As long as this Pokemon is on the field during Pokemon Checkup, you may heal 20 damage from all of your Pokemon. Healing 20 from all of your Pokemon is good. Just having to be on the field, not having to be active or any of that rubbish is good. However, it's a stage 2. And this is what we're seeing a lot from this format at the moment. From the cards coming out of Japan from Scarlet and Violet, we're seeing a lot of really interesting stage 2s, but they're still stage 2s, and we're yet to get a really good way to get these stage 2s out. So once again, I adore this ability. I think it's great. And no, there is nothing in the wording that says you can only use one of these abilities during your turn. This does stack. You can use this ability multiple times, and if you got 4 of these out, you can be healing 80 from all of your Pokemon, but during Pokemon Checkup. That's after your opponent's turn, after your turn, etc. The massive downside here, it's a stage 2. The attack's actually not terrible either. 130 for 2 energy, and you discard the top card of your opponent's deck. It's fine. I like discarding a random card from the top of their deck. It's not exactly going to mill them out anytime soon. But just discarding a card from the top of their deck, it could be the card they're really after, it could be something they really need, and that's hilarious. And 2 energy on stage 2 is not horrendous, 130 is not that great in terms of power. You're playing this to the ability, but the attack is at least moderately useful. I'm giving this between 3 and 4 Wassies. We don't give half Wassies, that would be barbaric. And honestly, the only reason this doesn't get higher here is because, you know what? It's a stage 2, and stage 2s are super awkward, and it really is as simple as that, ladies and gentlemen. This is not an ideal situation. Sorry about that. But hey-ho, that's what you need to know. That's what we've got from Clayburst here, and I think Ting-Lu is great, and I think Chi-Yu has a lot of potential. But I want to know what you think, so let me know in the comment section, would you? Go nuts! Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at @TheWasi. That's where we talk about Pokemon and card games and Pokemon card games, all kinds of fun things. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts, join a Discord, chat with us about Pokemon and all kinds of fun things. Oh, and get shout-outs on the channel, like the lovely Chelsea Rose, who is one of our biggest supporters at the moment and is a very lovely person. So thank you very much for all the support and for being a very lovely person. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.